So this is our final class for this course. And as usual, we'll start with some sitting quietly to settle our minds and then do the mantra of the Buddha a few times. And then I'll lead a meditation on something that we've been looking at in this course about the nature of the mind and how afflictions like anger are not permanent, fixed aspects of our mind, but only temporary, transitory, and it's possible to reduce them and eventually remove them. So I thought it'd be nice to do a meditation on that to get a bit more understanding, awareness of that. Okay, so let's start with sitting in a comfortable position. Try to keep your back straight if you can. But don't hunch your shoulders, let them be loose and relaxed. And the same with other parts of your body. Try not to hold on to tension anywhere in your body. If you do notice any areas of tension, you can just put your awareness there at that spot and tell yourself to relax. Let go of that tension. Another way of releasing tension is that when you inhale, imagine the breath going to the place where the tension is and loosening it, releasing it. Then once you've reached the point of as much relaxation as you're able to, uh, pay attention to your breathing. Be aware of the flow of the breath in and out. Don't try to control it. Just let your body breathe naturally. And let your mind settle down in the present place where you are, the present moment right now. Put aside any other thoughts of the past or the future or other places or other activities. Just decide that for now, for this period of time, you'll keep your awareness focused on the here and now and what we're doing in this class. So focusing on our breathing in this way, being aware of the breath coming in and going out, can put our mind into a neutral state. So it's calm and peaceful, but it's neutral, meaning not virtuous, not non-virtuous, neutral. But the teachers advise us to try to have a virtuous, a positive state of mind for listening to teachings, doing Dharma practice, and so on. That way, what we're doing becomes virtuous, becomes the cause of happiness, spiritual growth, being of greater benefit to others, and so on. And so take a few more moments to generate, sorry, a positive motivation. If you're familiar with bodhicitta, the aspiration to become a Buddha for the benefit of all living beings, you can bring that into your mind as your reason for being here. If that's difficult, if you're not familiar with bodhicitta, another alternate motivation that's still very positive is altruism, wishing to help others. In addition to ourselves, I mean, we do things to help ourselves to be happier, healthier, and so on. But it's also good to expand our awareness, our scope, our vision, and think about helping others as well, as many other people and beings that you can think of. So if that feels okay, then you can say to yourself something like, I'm here to learn about the mind and about ways of improving my mind so that I can be more helpful to other people and beings and to the world. And if you're comfortable to do so, imagine the Buddha in the space in front of you. So he is someone who has developed his mind in the fullest way. He has purified all the negative, problematic aspects of the mind and developed all the positive aspects of the mind, like love and compassion and wisdom, to the highest degree possible. His mind is like the most perfect and pure mind that exists, and he did this to help us and everybody else. His whole purpose, his whole reason for working on himself was so that he could help us to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, and to help us achieve happiness and its causes. So he's an example of someone who's cultivated the altruistic intention in a really vast way. So he's totally concerned about us, wanting to help us, wanting to guide us. So see if you can visualize or imagine the Buddha in the space in front of you. And we'll recite the mantra of the Buddha a few times. While doing that, you can imagine light flowing from the Buddha into yourself, and it completely fills every part of your body, head to toes, all the cells, molecules, atoms. You become totally suffused with this light, which is Buddha's wonderful qualities, his realizations, his good energy. And it has the effect of clearing away our problems and afflictions and negative energy, and helping our minds attain more positive qualities and understanding and realization so that we can get closer to the state that the Buddha achieved. So I'll recite the mantra. You can recite it with me if you know, or you can just listen. Taya tha om mune mune maha manaye soha. Taya tha om mune mune maha manaye soha. Taya tha om mune mune maha manaye soha. And now for the meditation, we've been talking about afflictions. These are mental states that disturb our mind, make it unpeaceful, unhappy, and lead to various problems, both now and in the future. And these include anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, and so on. So think of one of these afflictions that you often experience. It's something that pops up in your mind from time to time, or maybe a lot of the time. So, are you able to recognize how this affliction disturbs your peace of mind, puts your mind into a state that's not very happy, positive, not really the way you would like to feel? But now ask yourself if this affliction is always there in your mind, like every minute, every second, every day, or is it something that comes and goes? Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. So if you can recognize it's not always there in your mind, that means it's transitory, impermanent. It comes and goes, not something permanent. And now check if there are times when you have the opposite state of mind. So, opposite to anger, hatred, irritation, are qualities like love, compassion, kindness, respect, and care for others. Or opposite to attachment, desire would be contentment, a lack of attachment. So, see if you can sometimes notice the opposite to those afflictive states of mind. So if you can notice opposite states of mind, then this should help you understand even more firmly that those afflictive, negative states of mind are not permanent. And it's also good to check, are they you? That affliction, that afflictive state of mind, is that you? Is that who you are? Are you and that afflictive emotion inseparable? Or is it just something that comes up in your mind occasionally and not who you really are? So if you can recognize that you and that afflictive emotion are not inseparably one, you're not glued together, and that is who you are permanently for all of time, then maybe you can learn to stop identifying with that emotion and see it as just a visitor to your mind, a guest, maybe an unwelcome guest, but something that just comes sometimes in your mind and not who you are. So, according to Buddhism, afflictions are transitory, impermanent. They're not permanent parts of our mind. And there are things we can do to work on them so that we reduce them, we decrease them. We can make them weaker and more infrequent. And eventually, it's possible to get beyond them altogether, such that they're gone from our mind and will never arise again. Let's see if you can accept that it is possible to reach a state of mind where we no longer experience afflictions like anger, attachment, jealousy, and so on. So the Buddha did this. Many other followers of the Buddha have achieved it as well. And Buddha said, we can do it too. Okay, so I've got some more material to share with you tonight. But before getting into that, I just thought to say a few words about the so-called quiz. Some people were asking about that. And so that's something that I've started writing it, but haven't finished. But when I finish, I'll send it to Venerable Dunya, and he'll send it to those. It's optional. I hope you know. You don't have to take it. It's up to you if you want to take it or not. And it's mainly for those who want to complete the whole program, the Discovering Buddhism program, and get a certificate. But not everyone wants to do that. So don't feel obliged to do the quiz, although it could also be helpful for you just to kind of test your own knowledge. And in fact, the quiz is more of an assessment rather than like a quiz or test. There's not going to be a grade. It's just for the teacher to have an opportunity to see if the students understand the material or not. But it's also to help the students to review the material and check if they understand it or not. So it's really for the benefit of the students and not to sort of check how smart you are or anything like that. So don't get nervous about it. Don't be stressed about it. Yeah. And it will be based on the material in the slides. So all the slides I've been showing each week. So the questions will come from those. So last week, I talked about some antidotes for anger. And we'll start tonight by looking at some antidotes for attachment, what we can do about attachment. So if we could have the slides. I think that's the wrong one. It should be the slides for class 6. It should have a 6 in it. Anyway, I'll start talking. So attachment is also called desire or clinging or craving. Different terms are used for it. And it's the affliction that arises in our mind towards some person or some object that we are attracted to, we find attractive, and we tend to think, oh, this object is so wonderful, this will make me happy. If only I can stay close to it, keep it close to me as much as I can, and continue experiencing pleasure with it. Okay, so one problem people sometimes have is distinguishing attachment. Could we go back to the previous slide, the one about attachment? That's what I'm talking about. The difference between attachment and love. Some people think that they are the same thing. Because in our relationships, there's probably, in most cases, a combination, kind of mixture of attachment and love. And the difference between them, Michael, can we have the first slide? The first slide is antidotes to attachment. So that's what I'm talking about now.
Is that not the one you're seeing? Because that's the one that's showing on my screen.
Well, the one I see on my screen says first steps toward overcoming ignorance. So there should
let me
have
just
been,
stop and
it was on there before. It was on there just a moment ago, and then it switched. So it should be the first slide in that series. There we go. That's it. That's the one. Yeah. So the difference between attachment and love, One explanation is that love, pure unconditional love, is more focused on the other person. We care about them, we want them to be happy. So our focus is on the other person and their happiness. Whereas with attachment, our concern is more about me, our ego. I want to be happy. I want to feel good. And this person makes me feel good. And so I want to keep them close as much as possible, keep them near me so that I keep having those good feelings. So that's what's involved with attachment. Sorry, it's gone. Yeah, there we go. Just stay with that one. Yeah. So it's what we need to do is look at our mind and look at our experience, how we feel with the people in our life, the people and beings, and try to recognize the difference between love and attachment. Our mind probably switches back and forth between them. At certain moments, maybe we're more focused on me, my needs, my happiness. I want you to make me happy. But at other times, maybe our ego is not so strong and we're able to focus more on the other person and really love them and really care about them and really, do what's good for them. So we have to recognize this in our experience. But anyway, the point is they're not the same thing. Okay. Attachment, as it's understood in Buddhism, is not the same as love. Okay, so what do we do about attachment when we do recognize it? Recognize the faults of attachment. Okay, so just look at your experience. You can also look at the experiences of others and try to see what happens when there's attachment. And if you're honest with yourself, then you should recognize that it leads to problems. When we have attachment to a person or to an object, it may not be there all the time. We may not be able to have it with us all the time. And then when it's not there, we really suffer, right? We feel sad and lonely and miserable because we don't have our object of attachment. So we become kind of dependent on that object. And we can, if in the case of people, we can become possessive of them and then try to control them, try to manipulate them. And that can lead to lots of problems. Some people don't like being controlled and manipulated. So then, yeah, we can have conflicts. So if we look at our relationships and any sort of problems that arise in relationships, and then investigate those problems, try to understand what happened here, what went wrong, we'll most probably find there was at least some attachment involved, such as, oh, I want you to do this for me, and I don't want you to do that. I want you to be like this, and I don't want you to be like that. So we tend to have expectations of the other person. And as long as they're fulfilling our expectations, we're happy. But if they don't fulfill our expectations, then we're unhappy and maybe even angry. So, yeah, so this is one way we can see the faults of attachment. Also, there's a quotation from Shantideva, the great Indian master who wrote the text Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And he says something about how, if we have desire, attachment for some object, person, or object, it never really leads to happiness. Because if we have attachment to something, we want something, and then we don't get what we want, which often happens, then we'll be miserable. We'll be unhappy because we can't get what we want. But he says, even if we do get what we want, we will still be unhappy. Okay, now that's a little harder to recognize, but it'll hopefully become more clear as we go through the other points. And again, this is something we need to check in our experience if it's true or not. So the next point is to contemplate impermanence. So this is actually one of the best remedies for attachment. Because when we have attachment, we want the person, the object to always be there, not change, not go away, not disappear or die. Yeah, we want permanence, but that's just not reality. The reality is that people are impermanent, pets are impermanent, objects are impermanent. They don't last, they don't stay the same. That's just not how things are. So the more we get familiar with impermanence, the changing nature of things, then that will help to decrease our attachment because it just becomes obvious, you know. If I get attached to something and it's not going to last, I'm just setting myself up for suffering. So this may take a while. It's not like immediately obvious, but the more we contemplate impermanence and get familiar with that, the more then we realize attachment just doesn't make sense. It's just creating problems and suffering for ourselves. Third point is, does the object really make you happy and satisfied? So when we have attachment for a person or an object, our mind tends to create all these sort of fantasies. How wonderful it would be if I could have that object, how wonderful it would be if I could have a relationship with that person. And if we are successful in getting the object or having a relationship with the person, then we probably will be happy. We'll experience some happiness for a while, but how long does that last? How long does that happiness last? So I'm sure we've all had plenty of experiences of this where, you know, you want some new gadget, some new device, and you manage to get it. And at first, oh, you're so happy with it, you're so excited about it. But sooner or later, yeah, that fades. Yeah, that kind of excitement, that happiness fades. And you might even start to become dissatisfied with it. And especially like with, you know, products. They're always making new and improved versions of phones and cars and computers and all these things. And so, you know, the one you bought last year now doesn't look so great this year. There's a better one. New, improved, does more things, you know, sleeker, lighter, prettier, and so on. So, I mean, they do that deliberately. They want your money. So they want you to be dissatisfied with last year's model and buy the new one. So, yeah. But same can happen with people as well, with relationships. Yeah. Initially, we're so happy in a relationship, but you know, after some months or after some years, then, you know, the feeling can change, the situation can change. And so the Buddha said something about this. He said that following desire is like drinking salt water. If you've ever tried doing that. I mean, if you're really, really thirsty and the only water you can find is salty water, you'd probably drink it. And it might give you a little bit of pleasure because it's wet, but the salt in the water will just make you thirstier. You will increase your thirst rather than extinguishing your thirst. So the Buddha said it's similar with desire. If we follow thoughts of desire, attachment, craving, then instead of our desire decreasing and becoming satisfied, we just become more dissatisfied. We have more desire, more dissatisfaction. So that's something to check, to investigate. You can look at experiences you've had in your life and see if that's true or not. And the problem isn't with the object. But the problem is our attachment. It's just that mind of attachment, because attachment, when we have attachment, then our mind is just thinking unrealistically. It's thinking, if I could only have that object or be in a relationship with that person, then it would be so wonderful. I would be so happy. And it sort of fools us, it cheats us, it lies to us. It's not true. We can't really get happiness from objects, from people. We have to find happiness within our own mind by cultivating positive states of mind, virtuous states of mind. That's where happiness comes from. That's the cause of happiness, not objects, gadgets, devices, relationships. I mean, we can get a certain amount of pleasure from those things, but it's not sort of real, deep, long-lasting, long-term, genuine pleasure or happiness. So, of course, it doesn't mean we have to give away our things and stop having relationships, but of course, we keep having relationships, keep having our things, but just to realize that these things are impermanent and they cannot give us real, genuine, long-lasting happiness and pleasure. For that, we need to look inward in our own mind and work on our mind. Then, last point, do a reality check. So this is kind of going a little bit in the direction of emptiness, that things don't exist in the real solid way that they appear to. And we kind of talked about this before, but more, I think, with anger. We can also do it with attachment. So it says, if the object was truly as wonderful as you think, everyone would see it that way. Is this true or not? So when we have attachment for a person or an object, our mind thinks, oh, this object is so wonderful, so fantastic. It's perfect. It's just what I want, just what I need. We have all these kind of fantasies about it. And it seems as if that object really exists that way from its own side. Like this wonderfulness is coming from the object, not just my mind seeing it that way, but it's really, truly 100% like that. So that's kind of how we see an object of attachment. So to check this, see if that's true or not, we can just look around and check how other people feel about that object. Do other people see the object in the same way that we do? So for sure, that's not the case. There's always different opinions. So there's some people who would say, oh, nice, it's nice. Others would say, oh, yuck, what do you see in that? Where do you like that? And others are just sort of neutral. So that gives us the chance to question our perception of things. And are we seeing things correctly or not? And the role of our mind, the role that our mind plays, the stories that our mind creates and then projects onto people and things and situations. So to look at that and realize, yeah, our mind is playing a big role here in this object, this person appearing so wonderful, so fantastic. So that's also a very helpful antidote to attachment. Yeah. So I'm just going through these kind of quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But yeah, these are things we need to work on our own and check to see if they're helpful or not. Okay, so then next is ignorance. And here I'm, instead of saying antidotes to ignorance, I'm calling it first steps toward overcoming ignorance. And the reason for this is because it's very difficult to work on ignorance. It's easier to work on anger and attachment. They're easier to recognize in our experience, easier to change to make changes in our mind. But ignorance is something quite deep and also quite subtle, not always easy to recognize. So I'm just recommending some first steps we can take towards it. And the first point here says, no, there are different types of ignorance, such as ignorance of karma, ignorance of ultimate truth, that means emptiness, and so on. So this is just a warning that the word ignorance, you come across this word a lot in Buddhist teachings, but it doesn't always mean the same thing. There are different kinds of ignorance. So just be aware of that and try to check what type of ignorance is being talked about in a given situation. Now, with Tibetan Buddhist teachers, probably most of the time when they use the word ignorance, what they're talking about is the ignorance of ultimate truth, meaning ignorance that doesn't see reality, doesn't see things as they are, but sees things in a distorted way. Because that's really the most important ignorance. That's like the root of all the other afflictions. It's because of that ignorance that we have the other afflictions like anger, attachment, jealousy, and so on. So ignorance is said to be the root of all of our suffering, the main thing that prevents us from achieving real happiness and achieving higher goals like enlightenment. Okay, so that's the main type of ignorance that they're talking about. But just to know, there are other meanings of ignorance. And so what we can do to start with is listen to teachings and study. So yeah, the antidote to ignorance, the real antidote to ignorance is wisdom. Okay, wisdom that understands the true nature of things, how things are empty of inherent existence. So that's difficult to understand. And so we need to listen to teachings as much as we can. So whenever you have an opportunity to listen to reliable teachers who are giving, course on emptiness, then listen to their teachings and also study, read reliable books, materials. So that way we gain an intellectual understanding of emptiness, what it's all about. We also need to think about what we learn. Okay, so emptiness is something we really need to contemplate, reflect on, think about to get some understanding what it's all about. Then third is meditate. We need to meditate on what we have come to understand through listening and studying and thinking. So they say there's those three steps: listening, thinking, and meditating. So those are the main steps to gain the wisdom that understands emptiness. And then third bullet point says, be willing to accept that you're not always right. So I think probably many, if not most of us, tend to think that our perceptions and our ideas about things are always correct. Yeah, and we tend to get sort of attached to our views, our ideas, our perceptions of things. And then when we meet someone who has different views than we do, we can sometimes be defensive or hostile or critical, thinking, oh, they're wrong, they're completely off. Yeah. And with that kind of attitude, if we're very attached to our views of things and think that we are always right, then this will make us closed to considering other points of view, other perspectives. And so not only can that lead to problems just in our daily life, But when it comes to developing wisdom, then that attitude becomes a big problem because we need to generate the willingness to consider that we're not necessarily right about everything. We don't always see things accurately. Yeah. That our mind can sometimes make mistakes about things. Because with regard to these teachings on developing wisdom, what we come to learn is that, everything we perceive, we're seeing things incorrectly. Yeah, that doesn't mean totally 100% incorrect, but there's a very fundamental mistake that our mind makes in the way that it perceives everything, including our own self, me, as well as other people, our friends, people we don't like, everybody else, and so on. And all the things in the world, everything that's going on in the world. So everything, yeah, we see all of these things incorrectly, inaccurately. So, of course, the Buddha said, don't just blindly accept what I'm saying, investigate it for yourself, see if it's true. But we have to be willing to do that. We have to be willing to think that, okay, my mind says this, Buddha says that. So let's see, let's investigate this and see what is true, what is, the actual way that things are. Yeah, so that's also the last bullet point, that your ideas about yourself, others, and everything else are actually contrary to reality. So that's what Buddhism says is, yeah, not only do we make mistakes in the way we see things, but the way we see things is actually totally opposite to how they are. But this doesn't mean that we should have doubt about all of our experiences and think that I'm completely wrong about everything. And then you might even end up thinking, well, I can't even decide what kind of bread to buy or what type of meditation practice I should do or what teacher I should follow. I'm just completely deluded, completely wrong about everything. I can't make any decision. So don't think like that. That's not the point here. When it comes to conventional reality, yeah, deciding what to buy or, who to be friends with and what teacher to follow and so on. So we can develop conventional wisdom. Yeah, there is a difference between conventional wisdom and ultimate wisdom. So conventional wisdom we can develop, based on, yeah, especially in the Dharma. The more we understand Dharma, the more wise we can become when it comes to making choices about how we act and so forth. So, yeah, this is more talking about ultimate truth, the ultimate level of things, how things exist on the ultimate level. This is where we make big mistakes. And so, yeah, basically, I'm saying we need to learn about emptiness, think about it, meditate on it, but also be willing to check if our perception of things is correct or not. And also, it's recommended that to be able to understand emptiness, it's important to do purification, practices of purification. This is something that will come later in the Discovering Buddhism course if you haven't already learned that. But to purify our negative karma and our afflictions and so on. So clearing away negative energy in our mind and building up positive energy, good energy, merit, or whatever you want to call it. So this helps our mind be in a better state for being able to understand emptiness when we do embark on that. Okay, so next, I wanted to share some advice from my experience on how to work with afflictions in a balanced way, in a healthy way. And what that means is without beating yourself up. Because a lot of people, especially in our culture, have the tendency to be hard on themselves, and even have, self-hatred, self-loathing, self-criticalness. And so when we start looking at this topic of afflictions and looking at how, oh, there's anger in my mind, there's attachment, there's jealousy, we start becoming more aware of our afflictive states of mind, then it's easy to fall into self-criticism. I mean, if you've been doing that already in your life, then now you have even more fuel to criticize yourself, more reasons to criticize yourself. You may think, oh, wow, I used to think I was a bad person, and now I find out, oh, I'm really terrible. I have all these afflictions that Buddha talked about. So that isn't the right attitude. We should try to avoid that. So the ideal thing is working on afflictions with kindness, with compassion, with patience towards yourself, not with self-hatred. So how to avoid doing that? First, mindfulness and introspective awareness. So mindfulness here means just watching your mind, paying attention to the kind of thoughts that are going on in your mind. And introspective awareness, it's like a companion of mindfulness that enables us to recognize when our thoughts are wrong, are afflictive, are negative. So, if there are thoughts going on in your mind, like, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so lousy, I'm so horrible, I can't do anything right, and so on and so forth, then with mindfulness and introspective awareness, you can recognize that going on, and you can step back from that and say, no, this is not beneficial. This is not useful. And it's not even true. It's exaggerated. It's just anger. Okay, it's anger, hatred turned against yourself. And that's an afflictive emotion. You don't want to perpetuate that. You don't want to, increase that. So with mindfulness and introspective awareness, you can recognize when your mind is getting caught up in self-hatred, self-criticalness, and then you can stop it. You can say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Then next is recall the Buddha's and Bodhisattva's compassion. So this may not work for everybody, but I find it really helpful because, when I try to generate compassion and love for myself, I find it really hard. But if I think about the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, they say there are many, many Buddhas, many Bodhisattvas, and they have pure, unconditional love and compassion for everybody, every single living being. They don't have any anger or hatred or criticalness or judgmentalness. Their minds are completely free of those kind of attitudes. So just like, a mother or a father with their little child, a little baby that's, been born recently, they just have complete love and compassion and just want to take care, want to help. So I find that, when I'm meditating on the Buddha or Chenrezig or Tara, to just spend some time thinking about how they see me. Yeah, what's going on in their mind when they're looking at me? And try to imagine that pure, unconditional love and compassion. Yeah, and get in touch with that. And sometimes the mind says, no, I don't deserve it. But then that's kind of doubting the Buddha. That's doubting that the Buddha really does have unconditional love and compassion. Okay, so the Buddha sees that we deserve love and compassion. It's only we that can't see that ourselves because we're deluded. Our mind is deluded, afflicted. So anyway, that can be helpful just to think try to imagine how the Buddha feels towards you, and then think, that's the state of mind that I want to have towards myself and everybody else. I want to have that kind of love and compassion too. Then the third point is, again, to remember that afflictions are impermanent and they are not who we are. So if you're beating yourself up because you see afflictions in yourself, you see anger and attachment and selfishness and all these kind of things, just remember they are not permanent. They're not permanent parts of you, but they are impermanent, just like we did in the meditation at the beginning. So remember that. Just try to familiarize yourself with that, that these come and go. And you can see that for yourself. If you watch your mind, you can see, yeah, yesterday afternoon, oh, I was so pissed off. I was so angry. I was in a terrible state of mind. But then I woke up this morning and I felt really happy. I didn't feel angry anymore. So you can see for yourself, those afflictions are not always there. They come and they go. They're not you. They're not who you are. And then next point, there are antidotes to afflictions. There's like medicine, remedies, things we can use to overcome them. It does take time. You can't expect immediately, instant cure, they're all gone. But if we're willing to work on them gradually over time, we can definitely, I can say this for sure, no doubt about it. I can definitely see that my afflictions have decreased by working on these methods. They're still there, but not as strong as before, not as often as before. They can be reduced and eventually completely gone. Then, next point is others have them too. So again, this may not work for you, but you can try it out. I find it helpful, because sometimes when you're in a bad state of mind and you may think, I'm the only person in the world who thinks this way. Nobody else has such a terrible mind as I do. Have you ever thought that way? Well, in case you did think that way, it's definitely not true. Yeah, just open the newspaper, open the news apps, listen to the news. You can hear so many stories of people being angry and even acting out their anger in violent ways, or being greedy and acting out their greed and, again, committing crimes, cheating people out of their money. So you look at what other people are doing, you can see that, yeah, they have these afflictions too, and maybe even worse than me. I'm not doing those things. So that can help you to not feel so bad about yourself. Okay. Yeah, okay, I do have afflictions, but yeah, it could be worse. It could be worse. And then you can also feel how fortunate I am that I have the chance to learn about my mind and how to work on my mind. Yeah, and a lot of people have no idea how to work on their mind and maybe don't even want to. Yeah, they maybe think, oh, it's fine to be angry and greedy and do all these things. Don't even have the interest in working on their mind. So, if you have the thought, I do want to work, I do want to decrease my afflictions, I do want to apply these antidotes. So that's fantastic. So, give yourself credit, pat yourself on the back for the positive attitudes you do have. And then finally, the last point is take the middle way. This is how I call it. Neither suppressing nor indulging. So what often happens when an affliction arises in our mind, we tend to fall into one of these two extremes. One extreme is suppressing, denying, just pushing it down, shoving it under the carpet, trying to pretend it's not there. So that's suppression. That doesn't do any good at all. That doesn't help at all. It won't go away. it doesn't get dealt with, and it might lead to other problems, physical problems like illness or other kind of mental problems. So don't do that. Don't suppress. The other extreme is indulging, and that means when an affliction comes up and we just totally get caught up in it and kind of lounge in it and even act it out, yeah, in our speech, our actions, our behavior, and so on. So that's also not helpful because that can lead to problems. Yeah, if we're acting out our anger, for example, then we do things, we say things that hurt people, get ourselves into trouble. Okay, so there is an alternative to those two approaches, and that is to acknowledge the presence of an affliction in your mind. So if there's anger in your mind, acknowledge it. There's anger. Don't pretend it's not there. Don't deny it or suppress it. But don't act it out. Don't indulge in it and act it out. I mean, you might do it for a while, but eventually say to yourself, no, 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 this isn't helpful. It's not helpful to get caught up in my anger. I want to apply an antidote. I want to work on decreasing my anger and transforming my mind into something more positive. So that's what the meaning of the middle way is. The middle way is to recognize that there's an affliction in the mind and then taking steps to work on it, applying antidotes. And I shared a few antidotes in this course. There's lots of other antidotes that you can find in various materials. And in the Discovering Buddhism modules, as you go along, there'll be further material about how to work on the mind and make it less negative and more positive. So these are just some tips. It does take time. It's important to accept that. We can't transform our mind in a couple of hours or days or months or years. It's really a lifetime work, but it's worthwhile. It's definitely worthwhile. You'll be a much happier person. Your relationships will go better as well. Okay, so I've talked quite a bit now about how to work on afflictions, and transforming our mind has sort of two approaches. One is working on the afflictions, decreasing the afflictions, but the other side is cultivating positive states of mind, positive mental qualities. So these include things like love, compassion, patience, and wisdom that understands how things are. So there's lots of positive qualities. I'll talk about a few of those tonight. And cultivating is kind of a nice word, cultivating. It's actually a translation of the Sanskrit term bhavana, which is the word used for meditation. So the whole idea of meditation or spiritual practice is we are cultivating good qualities in our mind. Just like if you have a garden, people love gardening, so they have a little plot of land and they put seeds and water them and take care of the little plants. And eventually they have nice vegetables, flowers, and so on. So it's similar what we're trying to do with our mind. We're trying to plant seeds of love, seeds of kindness, of compassion, of all these good qualities, and then taking care of them so that they can grow more and more and bring beautiful harvest of these wonderful qualities. So it does take effort, time and effort. It's not something we can do overnight. But if we understand the benefit of doing so, so the first bullet point says positive mental qualities are the source of happiness and well-being for oneself and others. There's actually, you may have heard, and if you haven't, you can look into this. Some scientists, some researchers have done research on positive qualities like compassion, kindness, and they have found that, yes, these qualities are good. They have measurable benefits for your own health. Yeah, you'll be healthier, you'll live longer, you'll have less stress, less heart disease, and happier. You're going to be happier. You'll have better relationships with other people. So there's lots of benefits they have found by doing research into these positive qualities. So don't just take the Buddha's word for it. Yeah, you can also look into this kind of research. So there's a lot of interest now among scientists, psychologists, sociologists, people in the care professions and so on, to develop compassion because it's clearly beneficial. So one place where we can start looking at cultivating positive qualities are these what are called the 4 immeasurable thoughts. And these are found in all Buddhist traditions, as far as I know. Although in the Pali tradition, the Theravada tradition, they have another name. They're called the Brahma Viharas or divine abidings. Okay, so they go by different names, but basically they're the same things. And so you don't even have to be a Buddhist to see the value of these states of mind. Yeah, I think they're kind of universal. Everybody can recognize that these are good to have and to cultivate. So they are love or loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So loving kindness in Buddhism is the wish for everyone, yourself and others, to have happiness and the causes of happiness. So it's something we already have. We already have that feeling towards some people, like our family members, our friends, pets, children, and so on. So it's a natural quality that arises in us with certain people and beings. We want them to be happy and want to do what will bring them happiness, give them gifts, take care of them, help them when they need things, and and just being kind and friendly. Yeah, doing what will make others feel good, feel happy, feel comfortable, safe, and have their needs fulfilled. So that's the meaning of loving kindness. And we can work on cultivating it more and more. There's meditation practices you can do to cultivate loving kindness. For example, just they say it's good to start with those people you already feel good about. It's easy to feel love for them. So you just visualize them one at a time and imagine that person there in front of you, and then just say to yourself words like, may you be happy. I would like you to be happy. And you can also imagine that person getting what they need to be happy. You can also imagine yourself giving them things to make them happy, doing things for them that will make them happy. So visualize that. And you'll see your love, your kindness grow. And it's such a beautiful quality. You feel really happy inside. So then you can go on, depending on how much time you have. Then you can think of other people. And they usually say start with the ones you find easy to feel good about, and then move on to those who are a little bit more difficult, like neighbors or people you work with, or the cashier in the grocery store. You're not so close to them, but you can still bring them into your meditation. Visualize them and think, this person wants to be happy just like me. And I would like them to be happy. May they be happy. And then you can do the same practice with them. And then with more familiarity, more practice, then you can start doing it towards those that you find annoying, irritating, difficult to love. But they deserve love too. And so by doing this gradually over time, your love, that feeling of love can grow more and more and more and more. And you can actually start feeling it for strangers and even those you find annoying. You do have to put time and energy into it, but it's definitely possible. And it's so rewarding because it's so much nicer to feel love than to feel anger, hatred, irritation, annoyance, right? So when you can see how nice it feels, you want to have more of it. And then compassion, the second is very similar to loving kindness. It's almost like, love and compassion are like two sides of a coin or two sides of a hand. They're very, very close, very similar. But compassion is wishing everyone to be free of suffering and its causes. It has a little bit different emphasis. It's more about recognizing that nobody wants to suffer, nobody wants to be unhappy and in pain. And when someone is unhappy or is in pain, then you feel touched, you feel moved in your heart, and you want to do something to help them. So again, this is something we all have. It's a natural quality, especially people we know and care about. When we see them unhappy, we see them in pain, we just immediately want to go and help them and take care of them and do what we can. And that can happen with strangers as well. People we don't even know. When we see that person is in pain, that person needs help, we just want to go there and do what we can to help them. So that's compassion. And again, it's something we feel naturally, but we can increase it more and more and feel it for more and more people. And you do a similar meditation where you bring to mind different individuals, starting with those that are easy to have compassion for, and then gradually expanding it to those who are more difficult to have compassion for. And eventually, even those that you find really annoying and you feel angry at, and may even sometimes wish them to suffer. But it is possible to turn your mind around and overcome that kind of attitude and feel compassion. So it does take some time and effort, but it's very worthwhile. So much nicer to have compassion than hatred and cruelty. And then the third is joy. And it's actually better to call it sympathetic joy or empathetic joy, because it's feeling joyful about others' happiness, good fortune, and virtue. And so, again, it's something we have naturally. When there's someone we care about and we see that person is happy, some good thing has just happened to them and they're really happy. So when we see that person happy, we feel happy too. Yeah, we share in their happiness because we want them to be happy. And when that happens, we're happy. So it's a natural feeling, but we don't always feel it for everybody. Sometimes instead we feel jealous. We feel jealousy, envy over somebody else's happiness. So that's the opposite state of mind, and that's very painful, very, very painful. And so, but we can work on our mind and turn our mind around and learn to feel happy and joyful, even at moments when, our natural feeling is to be jealous and envious, because it feels so much better. So it feels so much better to be happy for their happiness instead of begrudging and resentful and jealous. So again, when you can see how this state of mind is so beautiful, is so wonderful, is so joyful, you want to cultivate it. You want to have it more and more and more. Then equanimity. Equanimity is an unbiased attitude that cares about everyone. So it's the opposite of being biased, being prejudiced, where we care about some individuals, we don't care about others, and then others, there's some individuals we don't like them at all, and may even hate them or wish them to suffer. So our attitude usually is not equanimity. Yeah. So it's not easy, of course, as you can imagine, but it is something that is part of the spiritual path, something to be developed on the spiritual path, to be able to have equal concern, equal care, equal respect for everyone, and be willing to share our love, our compassion, our joy with everyone, and not leave anybody out, not reject anyone. So each of these four, there's a lot of material. If anyone is interested in knowing more resources on how to develop these, you can write to me and I'll send you resources. There's a number of books that are just about these four immeasurable thoughts and how to cultivate them. A lot of really, really beautiful material, but we don't have time. But just like in the next slide, this is a prayer of the four immeasurables. And there are other prayers as well of the, longer, shorter, but this is a standard one that we use in the FPMT. And so you can get a copy of this slide and then have this prayer. So it's easy to learn, easy to memorize. Just recite it every day for a while, and then you'll know it by heart. So this would be a way you could cultivate the four immeasurable thoughts, just reciting these lines and spending a little bit of time contemplating them and trying to really make them part of your mind, part of your attitude. Especially, first thing in the morning before going to work or wherever you go in the day, to start off the day with these thoughts in your mind and then try to keep them alive as you go through the day and interact with different people. So this is just one example of, or four examples, in fact, of positive qualities that we can work on developing and cultivating. They're really good for us. They're good for our health, good for our mind, good for our happiness. They're also good for our relationships. If we can have these in our relationships and interactions with others, then they will go much better. So then one last slide. This is just a summary of the main points we have covered in this course. It's kind of a very brief course to talk about a very big topic, but it really is just meant as an introduction to the topic of mind. What is the mind and what is the potential of the mind? And if you're interested in this sort of grabs your attention, then you'll learn more about that as you go through the program of Discovering Buddhism and other Buddhist courses as well. This is really the essence of Buddhism, working with our mind, bringing about a positive transformation of our mind. So this is just to go through the main points we've covered. First, it says each of us has a mind, and our mind is that this is the definition of mind: clarity, meaning it's non-physical, non-material, and knowing, meaning it's aware. Mind is that part of us that is aware, that knows, that experiences things. And so we each have one of these. And the mind, the second point, there are different types of mind. So mind isn't just one single thing, but it's varied. Many different types of mind. And these are just some of the types that we looked at: perception and conception. So some of our mental experiences are perceptions, like seeing and hearing and so on. And some are conceptions, like thoughts, memories, fantasies, and so on. We also looked at main minds and mental factors. So that's another way of dividing the mind. Main minds are those that just experience the presence of an object, the general presence of an object, and then mental factors are like specialize in dealing with the object in different ways, like feeling it, discriminating it, and so on. So those are all different aspects of mind. And next bullet point, mind is impermanent. That means it changes anyway. That's its nature, is to change. And it can be changed, meaning we can work on our mind and make changes in our mind. We don't have to be just stuck with the mind that we have and feel, oh, this is how I am, and I'll always be this way. I can't change. That isn't true. We can change our mind. And examples of changes are afflictions. Those are the mental states that disturb the mind and create problems. They can be decreased and eventually eliminated. And then positive qualities like love and compassion can be cultivated more and more in a really vast way. Last bullet point, our highest potential is full enlightenment or Buddhahood, state the Buddha reached. This is a state of mind in which all the stains, that includes afflictions and other kind of things that mess up our mind, these have been completely purified and all good qualities, positive qualities, fully perfected. So this is what the Buddhist teachings say, at least in Mahayana Buddhism, that every sentient being that has a mind has that potential to transform their mind in this really amazing way and reach the state the Buddha reached. So you may have trouble believing that, but that's okay. The Buddha said, don't believe, just check for yourself, see if it's true or not. Okay, so we have a few minutes left if anyone would like to ask a question before we finish.
Venerable, I have a question. I just want to make sure that if you and I were having a conflict, you would not be the sort you would not be my affliction. My affliction comes from me. In the same way that if I think you're the best teacher in the whole world, so now I start obsessing about coming to all your classes, you are not the source of my attachment. You are the object of the attachment, and the attachment and all of those things come from me, correct?
Yes, that's true. When an affliction comes up in our mind, either attachment or aversion, anger, the main cause of that affliction is in our mind. There are like seeds. They actually use the word seeds of afflictions in our mind that were left by previous experiences. Like I got angry many, many, many times in the past. And so there's still the seeds of anger in my mind left by that. And so the seed is there. And then when I meet a certain person, a certain situation, that's like the trigger for the anger to come up, like pouring water on a seed and then it sprouts. So the object, it's the object of our anger or attachment. And I mean, that triggers that seed. But if we didn't have the seed to begin with, like in the Buddhist mind, the Buddha has no seeds of anger, no seeds of attachment. So no matter what the Buddha meets, the Buddha would never get angry or never have attachment. Yeah. So that's actually really helpful to know, because we tend to think that person makes me so angry. Every time I see that person, they make me angry, as if my anger came from them. They are to blame for my anger. It seems like that, right? But no, according to Buddhism, it's not like that. I mean, they're the trigger, but the real problem is inside of us, what's going on in our mind. I see Jennifer has her hand up.
Yeah, my question is, with attachment to food, how do we find renunciation?
Oh, I'm still working on that, I have to say. Um, well, food is not something we can give up. Like certain things, heroin, you don't really have to take that. And it's better if you don't. But food we do need to survive. And so I think it's a gradual thing. I think you just try to work on reducing attachment. Actually, mindfulness is a very, very helpful a practice. I think there's even books written about how you can use mindfulness practice to overcome attachment to food. Because, if you watch what's going on in the mind when eating, the mind is probably fantasizing and it's probably jumping here and there, and you haven't even finished one thing and you're already jumping into thinking about the next thing you want to eat. So mindfulness, you slow down, you pay attention to what you're doing moment by moment. And that actually helps your mind not get so excited and overeat. And um, and you'll probably enjoy your meal much better. So that's one method, one way of overcoming attachment to food. But I also find in myself that when I practice, through the practice of meditation, I find better sources of happiness than eating food. Like the happiness, the peace I get from meditation and generating loving kindness and these kind of things is so much more satisfying than food. Yeah. And so I found that, the attachment to food, it just kind of decreased by itself by finding better sources of happiness.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Hi. Question, kind of as we're looking at the mind, what about medical ailments like Alzheimer's and dementia? Can you just explain, just kind of touch briefly what they say about that?
Well, they're not mentioned in traditional Buddhist teachings. And in fact, what I've heard is that among Tibetans, even elderly Tibetans, Alzheimer's and dementia are almost non-existent. And researchers have been looking at that and trying to understand why. I can't help but think that one cause might be because they're using their mind really well. Yeah, they spend a lot of time, especially the lamas, the monks and nuns and so on. They spend a lot of their time studying and developing these positive qualities and memorizing things. We have one teacher who's 96 years old, and he gives the most amazing teachings. His mind is still so clear and sharp, and no sign of any forgetfulness. It's incredible. So I think that I don't know, I think a lot of it does have to do with lifestyle, whether one experiences that or not. I'm not saying it never happens to any Tibetans. I think they have, mental illnesses as well. But yeah, I think using our mind in positive ways, like study and meditation and developing positive qualities, I think that, eh, is very helpful to deal with such problems. Well, I think it's about time to stop. So it's been really nice for me to meet all of you and do this course. I love this topic, and I hope it has been helpful for you. And I hope you continue doing more study, looking into and practicing these teachings on how to work on the mind, make it more positive, and decrease the afflictions. It's really worthwhile work to do. It's really the best thing we can do for ourselves and also for others. So I hope you've been inspired to do that and will continue to do that. So let's finish by making a mental dedication of all the positive energy we put into tonight's class, but also the whole class, the 6 weeks, and learning about, thinking about, and meditating on these teachings, which are so precious from the Buddha, from our masters in India and Tibet and so on. So we've been really fortunate to have a look at these teachings, and we've created a lot of good energy by doing so. So let's share this positive energy with other people, other beings. May it be a cause for all living beings to find their potential, to realize the potential they have for happiness and peace and freedom from suffering and the causes of suffering. And may it be a cause for everyone to attain awakening, their fulfillment of their highest potential. Okay, so thank you,
Thank you so much.
Michael and Ina, for hosting